there are things I never would have known that my students were going to latch onto had I not asked. And those are the things that are driving my pedagogy for the next time I teach this course. For example, sleep. My students are not sleeping. And when I ask this question, how many hours are you getting on average? They're like, oh, I do pretty well. I get 5. I'm like, whoa. So had I not asked, I never would have known. And that meant, okay, we are going to have a conversation about sleep. I can't not talk about it.
You just heard Krisstal Clayton from the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. Garth interviewed Krisstal for episode 245 of Psych Sessions, Conversations About Teaching and Stuff.
Hi, Psych Sessions listeners. This is Stephen Chu, one of the authors of Psychology in Your Life. For the new edition, I've created a series of brief videos that target common student problems in learning. They give practical, research-based strategies to help students learn more effectively. This new resource is called Improving Student Learning, a Video Guide. If you'd like to learn more about these videos or see a sample, feel free to reach out to me at stephen.chew, C-H-E-W, at www.norton.com.
Hey folks, I want to talk about autism spectrum disorder. Specifically, I want to talk about how good testing can help adults get the help that they need. But first, a few statistics. Did you know that almost 62 million people worldwide would qualify for the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis? That's 1 in 127. And when we think about teenagers in the US, that's more than 50,000 youth a year who are going to be making that transition from childhood to adulthood with this diagnosis. And many of them are actually going to lose critical services at this time. So enter ASRS. That is the Autism Spectrum Rating Scale for adults. It's scientifically valid. It's a multi-informant rating scale from leading experts Sam Goldstein and Jack Naglieri, tailored specifically to adults in their unique presentation. And it identifies late emerging symptoms and the masking behaviors that often go unnoticed. It's perfect for classroom demonstrations or projects and for training. This test goes for real-world relevance to help people. If you want to learn more, head to mhs.com and check out the Education and Training Partnership Program, or simply click Contact Us to get more information. That is mhs.com.
I'm Nolan White, and I'm a STP member because it is the one organization since I started teaching that has provided the most value both in personal relationships and professional development to help me become a better teacher. It was also one of the first places in my experience as a member of APA that made the organization smaller and more closely knit and helped me just develop a lot of individual connections that have continued to help me be a better teacher. Highly recommend that you join STP.
Hey everyone, Garth here. Thanks for listening to Psych Sessions. If you could go to wherever you listen to our podcast and you would follow that podcast or like it, it really does help us as we are trying to get out to more teachers of psychology. Also, if you haven't checked out our website, please visit psychsessions.org and sign up for our monthly newsletter. We offer free resources and valuable news that you are going to want to know related to the teaching of psychology. Thanks. Hey folks, I am here today with Dr. Krisstal Clayton, who is a professor of psychology at the University of North Texas. Krisstal, welcome to Psych Sessions.
Hi, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here.
That's so great. Well, we're excited to have you. And the more that I get to know about you, the more I think we probably should have got you on the podcast a while ago, because you just seem, well, you can tell me if these things are true or not. But okay. I sense a real passion for teaching and a passion for students.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I don't know, like maybe just off the bat, if that resonates with you, Can you tell us because I think your background is clinical, right?
No. What's interesting? Yeah. So at UNT, we have different tracks. So they call me a clinical professor because I'm a professor of practice and teaching. So that's like the applied track at UNT.
The title they went with.
Yes, that's the title they went with.
So many of our colleagues' institutions are trying to figure that out right now.
Yes, they are. It's very confusing.
Yeah. So that's an interesting choice in psychology to call it that. Yes. Is it clinical in other disciplines as well?
Yeah, so we have several clinical faculty which have different types of expertise that they apply, whether that's in the classroom, research, or service. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fascinating. Okay. Well, then that's great. See, I'll be the first one to mess up something in this interview, and then my guests don't even have to worry about it. But no, that's fascinating. So what is your area then in psychology?
I was raised in the field as a social psychologist, very much a generalist. My faculty advisor, David Trufimo, was just super pumped about the research, had his hands in all of the different areas. And right now he's tackling the philosophy of statistics.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's maybe we'll get back to him. I'm sure as a mentor, that was interesting to work with somebody who had so many different interests, right? Yeah. So how do you think about teaching these days? So much is changing with tech and AI and everything. How are your students doing? Let's just talk about that, because I know you got a teacher's heart. So
yes. Yeah. Right now I've got 625 students. We are in finals week. So I've got a lot of students, sending me emails and wanting to meet with me. So I've been lucky enough to observe both the face-to-face arena of teaching this semester, as well as the online arena of teaching this semester. And I'm noticing with Gen Z, there is definitely a struggle for wellness, how to stay on task. They're also struggling with attention. So how do we make the reading exciting? And then how do we make them want to come to class? Because something else I've noticed about Gen Z, which I really appreciate, is they always want to know why. Why does this matter? Why should I be here? Why do I need to learn this? Right? And so I'm really being pushed in a great way to constantly answer the why. Why should you come to class? Why should you do this particular activity? And I know that some faculty are definitely reaching out to me, asking questions about what do I do with AI as well, because now we have that in the mix. So I have been exposed to a lot of AI usage, especially in my online classes. I have a meeting with every single one of them, and that's several. I've got about 40% of my online students have been using AI this semester. And I have about 350 online students, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah. And they are sharing with me that the top reasons they're using AI is because they are overwhelmed. They're having to work a full-time job to help put themselves through school, or they're also caregivers for a family member. And then they also have to take 12 to 15 hours to stay fully enrolled so that they can have their financial aid. And they're commuting. So UNT is very much a commuter university. We have people coming in from all over DFW. So these students are running out of time to do their work. And so they're cognitively unloading a lot of that onto AI. And these conversations are very candid. And I very much have a bleeding heart for my students. And I've had several of them share with me everything they're struggling with. So I try to take the opportunity to even ask students, do you know what AI even does? Do you know how it works? And do you know how I'm able to recognize that you used AI in this assignment? And they are flabbergasted. They have no clue how AI even works. What do you mean it's kicking out almost the same thing? And my answer that it's kicking out for everybody else. And I'm like, yes, it's not a unique thinker, even though we call it artificial intelligence. So to explain that to students has really revealed to me that I need to do a better job teaching students, what does AI even do? Because they're not experts. And the truth is, you need to be an expert in that area to know how to use the AI, because we also know that AI makes mistakes. So how are you even going to see the mistakes, identify them, if you don't really truly understand the field yourself? And students are depending on AI to know all of the answers. Yeah. And they find out the hard way that AI does not have all of the answers.
You're doing a really nice job of articulating like our heart for students and for student learning. Like we really want them to get it, but also there are these barriers. And I think earlier in my career, I'm in mid-career now, and I think earlier in my career, I look back and see the way I dealt with these kinds of things that would just maybe get labeled as cheating or something like that. I like your perspective because there's a lot of context involved. And I think still there's probably a case to be made on the other side of, hey, you can go too far with understanding. But I love that you are educating students about it, but it seems like these days we're supposed to be teaching. I don't know if this is an intro class or what, but yeah, you're nodding. So yeah, it's an intro class. And we're supposed to be teaching all the content of intro and probably something about study skills and just like being a student. And now we're supposed to tackle AI too and walk our students through it. And you've got all these students you have to manage. I think this is like a major question on people's minds right now. So I just love to hear, how do you think through all the time you devote to that in an age where like burnout's a real thing for us, right? So how do you do it? And maybe you're going to tell me I'm a terrible example, Garth, of what not to do.
Like for my own burnout, honestly, I do a lot of yoga. I'm a certified yoga teacher. So that kind of helps me go, okay, I need to check out of this, check into my mat and be mindful. And I'm always revisiting, why are students doing this? Why are students using AI? What does the average student user of AI even look like? And I'm not going to know the answer to that question unless I meet with them and actually have these conversations. And that has been an excessive amount of my hours this semester. But it's information I have to have if I'm going to keep being an effective teacher, because AI is not going anywhere. And we know that AI can be used in very positive ways.
APA Publishing wants to give you 15% off your order. If you teach classes like counseling, clinical psychopathology, or multicultural psychology, then this is for you. APA Publishing has books that are written by experts that are grounded in evidence and really help teachers. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a book they have right now called Helping Skills. It's in its 6th edition, and it gives students clear, practical frameworks for understanding and learning counseling techniques. It's perfect for hands-on practice and skill development. Here's another one. Cultural Humility helps students build self-awareness and engage meaningfully across diverse identities and experiences. So head to apa.org because they want to give you 15% off your order today using code PS15. That's capital P, capital S, 15. Go check out APA Publishing.
But I have to, from my own perspective of whom I am as a teacher, I have to invest in my students to make sure that they can be effective users of AI. So I think what I'm going to really have to do is maybe create my own streaming lecture for my online classes that I can also deliver to my face-to-face classes in person, that kind of opens up the semester and talks about what is AI, what are my policies, how does it work, how can you use it effectively, and let them know that I promised them I'll have an assignment where they can actually see, where does AI go wrong? How do we correct it? And what does that contribute to your 21st century skills in the workplace? Because we also know employers are looking for these 21st century skills, right? And what I adore about psychology, and I think we haven't, really been welcomed into the business world for this, is we teach our students all of these. We are handling cognitive, digital, and interpersonal skills. but we kind of get pigeonholed for just the interpersonal and interpersonal. They're like, oh, psychology, right? Empathy and communication and leadership, which absolutely we do that. But we're also nailing the cognitive and the digital. And nobody really talks about that except us within the field. We know we have a lot to offer. So I also really appreciated the APA's IPI initiatives with research as the foundation, because that's what it is. It's these research skills, teaching students all of these research skills very early on that starts harnessing those cognitive and digital powers that they're going to need to become effective users of AI and effective people in the workplace with these 21st century skills. So I think that's where I'm going now.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, we know that our students are going to be employed, and so giving them an education that is actually relevant when they get out of our institutions is really, really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are you seeing your students in kind of other new ways? Post-pandemic, we're 5 years. Are we 5 years after the pandemic? Yeah, almost 6. It's been a lot. What other challenges? What are you seeing in your student body?
My students are having a really hard time kind of bouncing back with resilience. So when something happens to them that maybe, let's say they failed an assignment, or they just realized that because they haven't been coming to class that they're probably not going to make that A that their parents kind of are demanding that they make. I've had several students in that situation, and they don't know how to cope with that. They don't have these, mechanisms because they've never really thought about it, tackled it. And that also comes from not having a strong social network. They've been so much on their screens that they're not having these face-to-face moments where they're building friendships and they have the people in their lives who can pop in and check on them and give them advice and feedback. So I'm also noticing that they're pretty isolated. They're not sure how to make friends. And now I have to take that on as well in my classroom, which has been such a fun challenge for me this semester. I've got 210 freshmen in Intro to Psychology, face-to-face class. And I know that something that makes sure they stay enrolled and engaged is if they have a friend to come to class to meet with, right? So if I have someone I'm looking forward to joining and talking to, and we have something in common, then that's a big motivator to get into the classroom, right? So I decided to do team activities in a room of 210 students. I do a team activity every week. I'm constantly walking around. How can I help you? Listening to what they're saying to one another. It gives me an opportunity to make real relationships with these students. And then I'm putting them in team exams, which is the first time I've done this for such a large class. And I was so thrilled. I collected data at the end of the semester where they rate their peers. And I had them answer some pretty basic survey questions about, did you develop your collaboration skills as a result of these team activities? Did you make a friend in this class? And will you stay in contact with at least one person from your team after this class ends? And I was so pleasantly surprised by the data that, yes, I'm making friends, I'm building my collaboration skills, and more likely than not, I'm going to stay in contact with at least one person from this team.
I love it. You've solved a problem that I've heard from so many people who teach large sections, and that is how to make them feel small and how to get students connected. Yeah. Like I think the content, we're lucky that we teach a discipline that connects to most students just quite naturally, right? It's, as my friend Jane Hallinan says, it's really hard to mess up psychology, like in terms of interest for students. And if you're, I think she says it more cynically than that, but, so like, I just know you have a limited amount of time. And if you're prioritizing things like this, you are sacrificing something, right? We can't say yes to everything. So can you just tell me, and especially for people who are listening who have large classrooms, and hold on, I guess I want to ask a quick question first, which is, what is the architecture of your classroom? Like, is it a big like a hall?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a hall. It's a huge lecture hall.
Okay.
And we have tables, movable tables and chairs.
All right.
And then
so it's not tiered. It's not like tiered up like in my intro to psychology class. It was like theater seating. But
yeah, we don't have great theater seating. It's kind of a slight slope.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a lobby area right outside of the room. And I'm pretty lucky at UNT because in most of our buildings with these really large lecture halls, there's a big lobby right outside the door, right? So I've got students kind of clustering wherever. Some students are on the floor. Some students are right outside in the garden area. Some are in the lobby. And I kind of let them go be and do wherever they're comfortable. And then I've had to change my walking shoes, right? So I now make sure I'm like, okay, we're in flat shoes today because I'm going to be huffing it, right?
Yeah.
But I really have enjoyed the walking around and listening to their conversations because they really truly are diving into the topic and they're looking things up and they're having these fantastic conversations. And then they stop me and they ask questions and I get to actually help them in real time. And that helps me do a check on, I need to cover this a little bit better. Maybe I didn't do this right in lecture. So how do I improve for next semester? So it's also a great way for me to keep learning about my teaching. And they give me all of these great examples I would never know existed because I'm not, tuned into their music. And I really try hard with their social media and YouTube, but I'm going to miss some stuff. So they also give me these wonderful examples that I can recycle to keep connecting with students.
So when you're giving them these team activities, and I'll get back to my original question for listeners who are like, why didn't he get back to his original question? I'll get back to it. But when you're doing this, what is their motivation? Because I think you've talked about engagement in the past as well. Mm-hmm. And what is their motivation for doing these teams assignments during class or these conversations? Why are they doing them and not just, having a side conversation or on their phones?
I've never asked them why they're doing the work. Uh-huh. However, I'm trying to use my good principles of learning as well as this is worth a decent amount of points. So you got to get here, right? And I've also learned that about Gen Z as well as millennials is a lot of gamification. We grew up with playing the video games. So if I'm going to connect points to something, you are much more likely to come here and do the work, right? But I'm also trying to connect it to things that I know matter to students because of the several conversations I've had with them. And one team activity I created that was new this semester was trying to teach them about ultra-processed foods, connected to the sensation and perception chapter in intro, as well as the bio chapter in intro, because I wanted them to learn about ultra-processed foods and how they're engineered for pretty much us becoming addicted to these fats and sweets and salts. And students don't think about psychologists as people who help engineer food, right? They often stereotype us as, clinical and counseling, right? We're here to help people. I'm like, no, we're also engineering your food. So I created a team activity where they have to create their own ultra-processed food for the Texas State Fair. For those of you who might not be aware, the Texas State Fair is incredibly famous for the just outrageous food concoctions that they sell at the state fair. And even during COVID, people were lined up in parking lots just to get the state fair food, even though they couldn't participate in the rides or any of the activities. It's that big of a deal. So they had to create their own state fair ultra-processed food and then draw a concept map for me to show how do these different ingredients connect to, right? Dopamine pleasure pathways. What are we lighting up? What's going on with your taste buds? What about your olfactory receptors? And they had a blast. And the foods they came up with, I could honestly see them making their way to the state fair. And then I had a competition. My TAs decided which one of these state fair foods would I honestly want to try. So we had first, second, and third place winners. And I kid you not, they got to be creative. They learned the science behind it. We had a competition. It was a blast.
I celebrate those moments where you pull off the assignment that, because you never know how it's going to go, right? But when you develop something that really connects with students, it brings fun to learning, and then and brings your students all together, like 200 of them. I'm sure they were really interested in what won the top 3 prizes, right? So, but okay, so you did mention something. Regan Gurung and I have talked a long time about, can a student earn an A without coming to your class? Especially in like large classrooms. We go back and forth as we talk about that, and we know there's different philosophies on it. But it sounds like you've gone the direction of, you really need to be here if this is a face-to-face class. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I do not structure my class so that students can get an A if they're not attending. I don't. And I also structure my class in a way that I need them to read, take a reading quiz, and then you come to lecture.
Yeah.
So I still believe that reading is absolutely fundamental, especially with this generation of students who are reading far less than the generations I've taught previously. So I want them to be exposed to the power of reading and how important it is. And then we can have really meaningful conversations during lecture. And so that helps me become also more efficient, and that I can focus on the concepts that I know are much more difficult for students to understand. That in my experience, they really grapple with these things like independent and dependent variables and operant versus classical conditioning. Like these things can stump students. So I get to focus more on that because I know that they've read, that they're showing up prepared.
Yeah, I learned that trick, strategy, like a long time ago, and I still use it. I do have a question about the quizzing, because I do the same thing. It's changed a little bit. Like I used to do this interteaching strategy where I actually had them write things up, like answers to questions, but AI has kind of ruined that a little bit. So I pivoted. But with the quizzing, a lot of people are doing these multiple choice sorts of check-ins on the, like after the reading happens, then you do multiple choice sort of quiz. I imagine you use probably Vantage for that. Is that right?
For 2 of my classes, that I have Vantage access to. Absolutely. And that has helped me become very efficient.
Yeah. But how do you, because this is a struggle I'm having right now, and I actually don't care so much. I haven't solved this problem yet, but how do I know that the online quizzes are actually assessing what they learned from the readings and they're not just poking around and dropping those quiz questions into AI? In fact, I think I know the answer, which is that they don't. I can't determine that necessarily. But is that how you do it? Are these multiple choice kind of questions you're checking in with them about their reading before they come to class? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So what I really like about Vantage is that it's got these knowledge checks as well as the reading quizzes. So I can see how they're performing in the knowledge checks as they go through each chunk, right, of reading that's assigned to them. And then we've got the reading quiz at the end. And in Vantage, I allow students to take it twice, and I'll take the average of these 2 scores. But in Vantage, what is very helpful in my opinion is it has just this repository of like 45 questions, and then it's going to pull 15 for the first attempt, and then it's going to pull 15 different ones for the second attempt.
Nice.
So I get to run a report, and I get to see, okay, what concepts connected to these learning outcomes did you consistently get correct, and which concepts connected to these learning outcomes did you not get correct?
Great.
Psych Sessions is proud to partner with Macmillan Learning. At Macmillan Learning Psychology, content matters, and these days, digital content matters more than ever. Macmillan Learning's Achieve elevates interactive teaching and learning with an extraordinary range of online course content in a powerful yet easy-to-use platform. Interactive ebooks, innovative assessments, engaging videos and activities, helpful instructor resources. Achieve brings it all together and makes it easy for you to find what you need and what you want. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
And then I can also look at how long did you spend in this quiz, because that's also helped me with kind of tackling this AI issue. Is if you're doing this in 2 minutes, 15 questions, and you got a perfect score, then I'm like, something's not adding up here. But if they're digging into the textbook while they're answering the questions, I'm perfectly fine with that. You're digging into the textbook. At least it's motivating you somehow to get into the content, to try to find the answer. And the truth is, I use Google all the time in a similar way. I can't remember every piece of research I've read and who wrote it. And that means I've got to get into a search bar and pull it up and then figure out what's the right answer. If students are doing that with a quiz advantage and they're pulling up the text to try to search for the answer, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice way to think about it. And to bring kind of reality back. I think the days of old where this tech just didn't exist, like those are gone and we can't long for them. We need to have better strategies, better ways of thinking about them. It's a little bit of a mistake to just try to recreate the past. I think we're beyond it at this point. But we should also mention too that the textbook that you probably use is probably your textbook, I imagine. Is that right? Okay. So I was thinking about that a little bit because I noticed a couple of things. One, I think you all have a new edition coming out right away, and you are taking the first author role on that new edition at this point.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, what goes into your? I think it's a workload difference, right? Being third author to going to be first author. What?
Yeah, significantly. Yeah.
So did you have to think through, and everybody, I'm coming back to that other question that I had before, but did you have to think through, like, where am I going to find time and make space to do this? Or are you a person who just says yes a lot?
I often say yes too many times than I should, right? I really had to work on myself with good boundaries. However, I would consider myself first and foremost a psychology fangirl. So when I was given this opportunity to jump onto this book and, meet Saul Kassan, because I also teach forensic psychology. So I've been following Kassan's work for a very long time. And how do you say no to that? So when I jumped on, I was also pumped about the pedagogy. I had never seen his intro book before. And I was already using a lot of the pedagogical methods that Kassan was using in his edition of this intro book back in the early 2000s. So I just poured myself into it because I was having so much fun. I loved it. I thought it might be like writing my dissertation. Nope, not even close. I got to learn so much cool stuff that was out there that I never would have touched had I not had this opportunity. So for the second edition, Saul was like, I've been doing this a long time. I think I'm ready to start heading towards retirement. And then my other co-author, Greg Privatera, has so many textbooks. I mean, I have no idea how he juggles all of these textbooks. And then he had a new offer pop up to write a health statistics book. Yeah. With one of his very dear colleagues. And he was like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, you should, it's your dream. Right. But my dream is intro text. So I'm going to, just jump all in and go for it. So I had, just enough warning that this might happen that I was like, okay, I'm going to apply for a sabbatical just in case. I just want to be prepared. And sure enough, I got my sabbatical, and then Sage was like, okay, let's get this party started. So I've been writing nonstop since I'd say last August. Just constant writing.
Yeah, that's a year. That's a year in like 4 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just here's my one chapter. Sweet. Yeah. I walk away. No, it's here's my chapter revise, chapter revise, chapter revise.
Yeah.
Then we would do images and figures and then, put all my citations in the right order. And I was so lucky to have a really good team. And Emma Newsom in particular, jumped on organization, really helped with the workflow. So I never could have achieved any of this without a fantastic team. So it was not just me. I promise you that.
I talk to a lot of textbook authors. I'm friends with a lot of them. I know I have heard how demanding it is. Also how rewarding it is. But congratulations for coming through that, because I think you're about to launch, right? I think the team is thinking January or something.
Yeah. So I just finished all of the proofs, reviewing them, adding any last minute corrections I could. I think I just submitted those last week. So I'm still in this moment of, is it real? Am I really going to be a first author of this textbook? Is it going to be beautiful and are students going to love it? And is it going to have everything instructors need? Because while I absolutely adore students and they are very much my purpose, I'm also an educator who, yes, as you mentioned earlier, knows what real burnout is like. So I want to also make sure that this book has a lot of things that can support instructors so that they can hopefully reduce their chances of burnout and focus on what they do best instead of having to spin their wheels coming up with these great real world examples that resonate with the current generation and develop, quizzes. And I'm really hopeful that this is going to have a lot of what they're going to need to get started.
I love this story for authors who are coming onto titles and then kind of moving up the author list, because it happens more often than you think. And some of my other friends who have written, they started as reviewers for a textbook that they liked, right?
Yeah.
And so they had been using that book, and then they were really valuable reviewers. And then the publishers were like, hey, you've got something that we like.
Yeah.
And is that at all your story with this title? Or
I streamed a while back, I think Nolan White's, podcast you did with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so close to what has happened to me. I had actually been using Greg Privatera's stats book pretty, consistently. And a Sage rep, Josh Pergo, walks into my office one day and is like, hey, I see you're using the Privatera book. Do you want to talk about why? Why'd you adopt it? And I was like, yeah, have a seat. Great conversation. He comes back a few weeks later. Sage didn't have an intro book and asked me, hey, what would you want in an intro book? It's like, oh, wow, no one's asked me that. Well, let's talk about it. So I think we had an hour of conversation and he asked if he could share my information with his executive editor. I was like, yeah, I would love to talk about psychology and teaching. This would be great. I really thought I would sit on a focus group, maybe review someone's chapter. And instead, I was asked to create multiple choice questions, PowerPoint content, right? I had a great time. It was with Heinzen and Goodfriend's social psychology book. So I was loving it. And then the next meeting I had with Laura Parra, at the time the executive editor, she asked if I knew Saul Kassin. And I was like, well, of course I know Saul Kassin. And then how about Greg Privatera? And I was like, well, yeah, I've been using his textbook for years. So she offered to fly me to New York to meet them and talk about an intro book. And I kid you not, I don't think I've picked my jaw up off the floor since that first conversation. And to sit in Saul Kassin's office and see all of his boxes and boxes of cases that I was familiar with and just look out his window and, have him right in front of me just in this moment in time. And then there's Greg Privatera sitting next to me and we're having these conversations about how much we love students and the importance of psychology. I was beaming. I was absolutely beaming. So I have no idea how I got so lucky. So many happy accidents got me here. And I'm just constantly humbled that I have this opportunity. So it's been a fantastic ride. It really has.
Well, I am so happy that you shared that. I think that there are graduate students listening, there are early career psychologists listening, and I think you have to know that this is a real possibility if it's the way that you want to go. Of course, there are some fortuitous moments that can lead to these kinds of things, but it is the way that it often happens in that world. So I'm glad there are people out there like you who can share their stories. So you are in those early meetings. Do you remember what your group set out to do with this book? Like what was the conversation? Like what angle were you taking at Intro Psych when you started? And then I guess like where has that led to now?
Yes. Fantastic question. When I first took a look at this book, I had to buy one off of like half price books, right? And then just blow the dust off when it arrived. And it was this beautiful moment of, oh my gosh, this was Saul Caston's intro book. And I'm flipping through and I see this fantastic feature that really resonated with the way I teach, which was his What's Your Prediction feature. It opened up every single chapter. And I had been doing something similar in the classroom, but I had never thought about, oh, what a smart way to open up a textbook chapter where students get this really nice summary of just either foundational research or current research. And instead of them just kind of reading through it, they're being asked to predict what happens next. So it put them in the driver's seat, right? It kind of asked them to, hey, you need to play scientist right now. You need to start practicing the way a scientist thinks about research. So now that you know the background, what do you think is going to happen next? And I thought that was just brilliant pedagogy. I really loved the way he did that. And he had also these current examples. I remember seeing Britney Spears in his textbook and I was like, go Saul, right? Like, because back at the time with people that were, millennials reading that book, yes, he had a lot of current real world connection with his students. And Saul being Saul, he also had a feature called Psychology Applied. So here's this real world issue. And now we've got all of this research that explains why these things happen or how we've been able to solve the problem. And I had a good time just flipping through this book, reading the information. And I thought, you know what? We can't let any of this go. Like, this is golden. I'm still doing this in my classroom. And Saul loved that. He didn't want any of those pieces to go away because he still very much believes in them. The what's your prediction, the applied angle. And it was all agreed on. All right, we're going to hold on to these nuggets. And I won't let them go either, even though I'm first author now. Like, I'm keeping my claws in them because I believe in helping students develop that critical thinking skills, develop those skills, right? And how do I do that? Well, I put myself in that position of the scientist and I practice it. I can't just do this once. I need to do this over and over and over and over. And that's a great principle of learning is we need to have the practice. And it's a safe way to do it, to put yourself out there, to write something down in a book or just make a guess on your own and see what happens next. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but we all make mistakes in psychology. That's how science moves forward, right? We're not always correct in our assumptions. So that's something that we decided, hey, we're sticking with all of this pedagogy because it's just impactful and it's meaningful and it gets students engaged.
And before I ask this question, I'll just say this. I took over the director job of the annual conference on teaching for STP this year. And people were asking me, so what are you going to do differently? And I was like, nothing. Like, it's running successfully. There may be some things, some subtle things that I do differently, but year one, I'm just trying to get through this thing,
Yeah.
And so, but I do have like for subsequent years, I'm thinking about, what could we change and it maybe improve on or do differently. Have you thought about that question for yourself, like your personal touch on this? And have you been able to do that for this edition, or is this are you delaying that a little bit?
No, this edition, I went hard.
Okay. Yeah.
We got some fantastic reviewer and student feedback. And some of that feedback was, it might be a little too long. Our students, the reading needs to be concise. Like, can you trim it down a little bit? And then these are things my students are constantly asking me about. Can you expand that? And I really want them to think like a scientist. So can we have a whole chapter dedicated to that? So it was like, yes, yes, yes. So chapter 2 is now completely dedicated to methods with a little bit of statistics background so that our students can be media literate. Yes. And there are a lot of things that I feel passionate about that are woven into this textbook. For example, mindfulness. I know our students are very much struggling with their wellness, also their attention, their ability to be present. And there is a plethora of research on mindfulness and psychology and the benefits. So I've woven a lot of that also into the textbook. There are a couple of try this or psychology applied examples as well that teach students how easy it is to practice mindfulness. How can you do this at home? Or how can you do this just right before you're about to go to class or take an exam? And I love international travel. I love it. And I just started taking students to Italy for a study abroad last year. And I did that with a focus of blue zones. So what are all of these interesting psychological pieces that go into longevity for people in these 9 different areas of the world? And one of them happens to be in Italy. So I watched my students just really soak it in and experience how it feels when time almost slows down because you're not doing the hustle and bustle. And then the conversations about food and the size of packages and this isn't fatty. Where's all the salt? Stuff I didn't expect them to really talk about. So I wove that into the textbook as well because they just couldn't stop asking questions about why was it so different from what they were used to in the United States. And then portion control. I also am working on getting certified in women's menopausal health. And questions that often come up are, well, what is my portion size? Do I have to have a scale? Well, what about the plate method? And I thought these are all wonderful questions. And my students had the same questions because one serving size could be a king size pack of Reese's cups, right? Or a Reese's mini. It all says one serving. How am I supposed to know? So thanks to my training in wellness, I, stumbled upon what's called the hand method. And I taught my students to use their hands because it's this great individualized tool, unlike a plate, which can come in several different sizes. So how do we use our hands as a good mnemonic to know what our portion sizes should be? So yeah, I'm putting that stuff in there too. I just went for it.
Yeah. Well, I talk a lot about finding our authenticity and our unique contributions in the work that we do, whether it's a class or it's in our writing. I think in some ways we buy into this idea that to be a good psychologist, that you have to, follow the status quo, and to an extent you do, and our students do need to also follow the rules, right? And get the classes that they need for graduation and write in the ways that we tell them to write, etc. So there's a lot of conditioning to doing things the way that everybody does them. Yeah. And then at some point, I feel like mid-career offers you the opportunity, if you're lucky, to put your own stamp on things. I love that you're doing that. When you were talking about the mindfulness assignment, I have this assignment in my intro class. We're at the end of term right now too. And I asked my students, what was the most meaningful assignment that you did in this class this term? Because I have them do basically one thing a week that's a little out of the box. And it always comes back, at least out of the 10 things maybe that they did, a third of them are, I have them listen to my interview with Ellen Langer on Psych Sessions. And then, so they learn about mindfulness. And then I have them go on an hour walk without their phones and just to observe and take things in. And about a third of students say that was the favorite thing they did. It's just such a novel experience for them and for most of us actually as well. Yeah. So, students are, I can hear that when you are designing things, you're thinking about what do students need right now, yes, and who are these students coming in. That's been like a theme of our conversation. So anyway, I love that. I want to get back to your classroom, okay, because I think that this is where like the rubber hits the road, right? We have all these recommendations. You already mentioned IPI. You write a text. I'm guessing, even though would you call it a brief text? Would you? Or
middle.
Okay. So
yes, very in the center.
Yeah. So you have this text. You probably cover all the traditional chapters of the content of psychology, right? And so then you actually have to put it into practice in your classroom.
Yes.
So how do you take the recommendations are kind of broad, even from APA, a little unclear, kind of like there's a lot of decision making that you still get to make as an instructor, and then you get this book by Clayton et al. And you take this into your classroom and it's got these 16 chapters still. How are you practicing intro psych for your students? How are you making decisions about what to keep in, what to leave out, especially if you're doing these collaborative activities in your class? So I think that's the question I have, and everybody's listening now.
No pressure. Yeah. Yeah. I lean heavily on what resonated the semester before, the last time I taught this, and I'm constantly taking notes. I see myself as a learner right along with my students. I'm learning about what's important to them, what didn't stick, what can I do better. So when I have these opportunities to teach intro, I'm always going back to my notes. I'm reviewing my teaching evaluations, all of the emails students have sent to me about things that really mattered to them. And I also have an assignment, kind of similar to what you're talking about, where I have students do a bullet journal, and they have to apply psychological concepts to their reflection on what their habits were over the past 4 weeks, what minor changes did they make that made a huge impact in their wellness, and what lesson in psychology did you decide you wanted to share with other people? Like, what was so inspiring to you that you had to talk about it with everybody else, right? So as I'm reading these and going through them and grading them, there are things I never would have known that my students were going to latch onto had I not asked. And those are the things that are driving my pedagogy for the next time I teach this course. For example, sleep. My students are not sleeping. And when I ask this question, how many hours that you're getting on average? They're like, oh, I do pretty well. I get 5. I'm like, whoa. You think that's good? 5 hours of sleep? Like, what's happening here? So had I not asked, I never would have known. Yeah. And that meant, okay, we are going to have a conversation about sleep. I can't not talk about it. And then what's going on with social media and mental health and body image? Students are asking me about this all the time. So I can't not talk about that either. So the constant process of note taking, that's what helps me decide, okay, this is what we're going to talk about.
What do you not talk about then? What content are you comfortable leaving out of intro psych for your students? Sure.
Hypnosis. I don't cover hypnosis. This semester, I dabbled a little bit in recreational drugs, but I didn't dive deeply into the consciousness realm and covering, all of the recreational drugs. Will I do something differently next semester? Or the next time I teach intro? Yes. In that I do want to hit conversations about vaping. I definitely touched on that this semester, and now it's going to be in the new edition of the textbook because we have a lot of students worried about their lung health and the addictive properties of vaping. I also don't focus too much on, let's see which chunk. Dissociative identity disorder. I've started leaving that out, and I'm trying to focus more on also conversations about neurodiversity. Students are getting a lot of information on TikTok about, well, what is ADHD and what is autism spectrum? And I've had students say, oh, well, I have adult ADHD. I'm like, hold on. Adult ADHD? Let's talk about that. So I've had to think about, what do they need to know from the DSM-5 revised edition, right? And what really don't they need to know? So I've also thought deeply about what I'm going to cover in the psychological disorders chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a sacrifice when you go deep with students and you try to look into some of these really relevant issues. And it sounds like you're listening to your students. You are trying to equip them from psychology with the content that is actually going to be relevant and improve their lives. And I think it hurts some people's hearts when I say that that not all of the content that we offer in psychology is necessarily helpful for students.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. And watching them glaze over is a huge sign to me, where they're just like, they're not tuning in, and I find that, you're right, so hard, because I love it all.
I know.
So how do I break up with something I've had a relationship with for decades and I believe is incredibly important for them, right?
Well,
so yeah,
there's only so much time, and we get to spend that time, I think, glazing over, it's a nice way to put it, glazing over the content of intro psych, because I think if you're trying to cover it all, that's what you're doing. You're just sort of glazing it like a donut, and it's not going to get deep into kind of students' minds and their experiences. But I really like how you have talked us through, especially in a large section, how you're going for some of these kind of deeper issues in the content and applying it. Okay, well, I have taken an hour of your time, and I just want to say thanks for doing this. I want to wish you good luck as you all launch second edition. And I don't know, maybe we'll see each other around at one of these conferences one day. So
I'll be at NITOP. I'm not sure if you are going to attend.
I'll see you at NITOP, and
awesome.
Which will, by the time this comes out, will have hung out already at NITOP. So it was nice to see you at NITOP.
Yeah, it was nice to see you too.
Thank you, Krisstal. Have a great day.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.